The great chamber was silent. Thousands of alien figures stood in the darkness, their eyes fixed on the small group of humans at the center. Ambassador Elena Vasquez could feel their hatred. It pressed against her skin like cold water. She had known this day would come. Every human diplomat had known. The galaxy did not want them here. The galaxy had never wanted them here. The council speaker rose from his throne. He was a Vethkai, tall and thin, with skin like gray stone and 4 arms that moved like snakes. His name was High Consul Tyraxis, and he had pushed for this moment for 20 years. The vote is complete, Tyraxis announced. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. 417 species have spoken. Humanity is guilty. Elena did not flinch. Behind her, the other human delegates shifted nervously, but she remained still. She had prepared for this. Earth had prepared for this. The charges are as follows. Tyraxis continued. He lifted a data tablet and began to read. Uncontrolled population growth. Dangerous expansion into protected territories. Illegal research into forbidden technologies. Refusal to obey Concord limitations on military development. The list went on. Elena listened to each charge, and with each one, she felt a small spark of pride. Yes, humanity had grown fast. Yes, they had pushed into new territories. Yes, they had studied technologies that the Concord had banned thousands of years ago. That was what humans did. They grew. They learned. They refused to accept limits. That was why the galaxy feared them. The sentence, Tyraxis said, and his voice carried a note of satisfaction, is permanent exile. All human beings will be relocated to the Shroud Expanse. The transfer will begin immediately and will be complete within 1 standard year. After relocation, all contact with human space will be forbidden. Any human vessel found outside the Shroud will be destroyed without warning. A murmur passed through the chamber. The Shroud Expanse. Even Elena felt a chill at those words. The Shroud was the galaxy's graveyard. It sat at the very edge of known space, a region of dying stars and twisted space. Radiation storms swept through it without warning. Gravity behaved strangely there, crushing some areas flat while stretching others into impossible shapes. The few planets in the Shroud were poisonous, hostile, and dangerous beyond measure. The Conquered had sent other species to the Shroud before. Species they considered too dangerous to live among civilized races. None of them had survived more than a few generations. The Shroud always won. Does the human delegation have any final words? Tyraxis asked. There was mockery in his tone. He expected begging. He expected tears. Elena stepped forward. The chamber fell silent again. She looked up at the assembled aliens. The Vethkai with their stone skin and ancient pride. The Seraphim, beings of pure light who thought themselves angels. The Krone, the oldest race in the galaxy, who had watched civilizations rise and fall for 300,000 years. The hundreds of other species, each one certain that they were doing the right thing. They were afraid. Elena could see it in every face, every eye, every glowing sensor. They were terrified of humanity, and this fear had driven them to murder, because that was what this was, not exile. Murder. They were sending 19 billion people to die in the worst place in the galaxy. Elena smiled. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. This was not the reaction they had expected. We accept your sentence, Elena said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. We will go to the Shroud. We will take our people, our ships, our dreams, and we will leave you in peace. She paused, letting her words settle over the chamber. But I want you to remember something. All of you. Remember this moment. Remember that you looked at a young species, a species that had done nothing but grow and learn and reach for the stars, and you decided to kill them. Not because we attacked you, not because we threatened you, but because you were afraid of what we might become. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of as many aliens as she could. You are making a mistake. Not because we will come back for revenge, not because we will survive and grow strong. You are making a mistake because fear is a poor foundation for civilization. You have built your Concord on the principle that anything different must be controlled or destroyed. That is not wisdom. That is cowardice. Tyraxis slammed his fist against his throne. You dare lecture us? Your species is an infant. We have maintained peace for 300,000 years. You have maintained stagnation, Elena replied. You have kept the galaxy frozen in place, afraid to change, afraid to grow. And now you send us to die because we refuse to be frozen with you." She turned back to face her delegation. They looked at her with a mixture of fear and hope. She gave them a small nod, a silent promise that everything would be all right. "We will go," she said, addressing the chamber one last time. "But remember that you gave us no choice. Whatever happens next, whatever we become in the darkness you have sent us to, you created it. This is your responsibility." She began walking toward the exit. Her delegation followed. Behind them, the chamber erupted in angry voices. Some aliens shouted insults. Others demanded that the humans show proper respect. A few, very few, sat in uncomfortable silence, wondering if they had just made a terrible error. Elena did not look back. The transfer began 3 days later. Massive conquered ships arrived in Earth's orbit, their weapons ready, their crews nervous. They expected resistance. They expected humanity to fight. Instead, they found humans quietly boarding transport vessels, families holding hands, children clutching toys, old people saying goodbye to the homes where they had lived their entire lives. There was sadness, yes. There was anger, but there was no violence. The Concord officers did not understand. How could a species face extinction so calmly? They did not know about the secret meetings. They did not know about the plans that had been made years ago. When humanity first realized that the Concord would never accept them, they did not know that every transport ship carried hidden cargo. Seeds, machines, data cores containing all of human knowledge. They did not know that humanity had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. Over the next year, 17 billion humans passed through the Great Gates into the Shroud. The gates were ancient technology, doorways that could transport matter across vast distances in an instant. The Concord had used them before, sending condemned species to their graves. When the last human was through, the gates were sealed. Special locks were placed on them, locks that could never be opened from the other side. The Concord celebrated. They held festivals and ceremonies, congratulating themselves on their wisdom. They had prevented a catastrophe. They had saved the galaxy from the human plague. In the halls of power, leaders made speeches about security and peace. In schools, children were taught that humanity had been dangerous and that the exile was necessary. Within a generation, most species had forgotten that humans had ever existed. They became a footnote in history books, a warning about the dangers of uncontrolled growth. No one wondered what was happening on the other side of those sealed gates. No one imagined that the Shroud, which had killed so many species before, had finally met something it could not kill. No one suspected that in the darkness at the edge of the galaxy, humanity was not dying. Humanity was evolving, and one day, they would return. The first year in the Shroud was hell. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the colony ship Perseverance and watched another vessel die. The radiation storm had come without warning, as they always did. One moment, the transport ship Guangzhou was flying beside them. The next moment, its shields failed, and 80,000 people turned to ash in seconds. Marcus closed his eyes and added the number to his count. 200 million dead in the first 3 months. 500 million by the end of the first year. The Shroud was killing them faster than they could adapt, but they were adapting. That was the miracle. That was the thing that kept Marcus going when the death counts made him want to give up. On a poisonous world called Cinder 7, a group of scientists had done something impossible. They had changed themselves. Using genetic tools that the Concord had banned centuries ago, they had modified their own bodies to breathe the toxic air. Their children were born with the same modifications, able to survive on a world that should have killed them in minutes. When Marcus received the report, he wept. Not from sadness, but from hope. "Send the data to every colony," he ordered. "Let them know what is possible." The message spread through the human fleet like fire. On every ship, in every struggling colony, scientists began to experiment. They modified themselves to handle radiation. They changed their bones to survive crushing gravity. They adjusted their eyes to see in spectrums that humans had never seen before. The Concord had feared human adaptability. They had been right to fear it, but they had not understood what it truly meant. Humans did not just adapt to survive. They adapted to thrive. They took hostile environments and made them home. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was the one who saw the pattern first. She was a geneticist, one of the best humanity had ever produced, and she had been studying the changes happening across human space. What she found amazed her. We are not just modifying ourselves, she explained to the Emergency Council on Haven Station. We are evolving. Real evolution, happening in years instead of millennia. The Shroud is not our enemy. It is our teacher. Every challenge it throws at us makes us stronger. Admiral Chen leaned forward. How is that possible? Evolution takes thousands of generations. Not for us, Yuki replied. Human DNA has always been unusually flexible. We have more genetic switches, more potential variations, than any species the Concord ever studied. That was one of the reasons they feared us. Under normal conditions, this flexibility is invisible. But under extreme pressure, it activates. We become more than we were. She showed them the data. Humans on high-gravity worlds were already showing bone density changes that would normally take 50 generations. Humans on radiation-heavy planets were developing cellular repairs that should have been impossible. Children born in the Shroud were different from their parents, better suited to this harsh environment. Give us 100 years, Yuki said, and we will be a new species. Stronger, smarter, better. But they needed more than evolution. They needed resources. The Shroud had few planets, and most of them were barely livable. The human population was still growing, still hungry, still demanding more space and more materials. That was when the engineers made their discovery. The Shroud was full of anomalies, tiers in space where reality did not work correctly. The Concord had always avoided these anomalies, believing them to be deadly. Human ships had learned to avoid them too, after several vessels flew into them and never came out. But a young engineer named David Okonkwo refused to accept that the anomalies were just random destruction. He spent years studying them from a distance, collecting data, building models, and slowly, he began to see something that no one else had seen. The anomalies were not random. They were doors. The space-time fabric is thin here, David explained to anyone who would listen. These rifts lead somewhere. Other dimensions. Other realities. If we can stabilize them, we can travel through them. Most people thought he was crazy. The anomalies had killed thousands. But David kept working, kept studying, kept believing, and in the year 2371, 24 years after the exile began, he proved everyone wrong. The first stable rift gate opened on a Tuesday afternoon. David stood before it, a shimmer of impossible light hanging in the air before him, and became the first human to step into another dimension. He returned 3 hours later with samples of materials that did not exist in normal space. Metals that were lighter than air but stronger than diamond. Crystals that stored energy with perfect efficiency. Elements that the periodic table had no place for. There are worlds out there, he reported, his eyes shining with wonder. Entire universes that no one has ever touched. Resources beyond anything we could imagine. And they are ours for the taking. The discovery changed everything. Human ships began passing through the rift gates, exploring dimensions that the Concord had never dreamed of. They found abandoned technologies from civilizations that had died billions of years ago. They found energy sources that could power whole planets. They found space to expand, to grow, to become everything the Concord had feared. And they found knowledge. Ancient databases filled with secrets that made conquered technology look like children's toys. Humans studied these secrets, learned from them, improved upon them. Within a decade, human science had advanced more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The Shroud, which was supposed to be humanity's grave, had become their cradle. Admiral Chen did not live to see the full transformation. He died 30 years after the exile, his body worn out from years of struggle and stress. But before he died, he gave one final order to his successor. Never forget what they did to us, he said. Never forget that they sent us here to die. But do not let hatred consume you. Use it. Let it drive you to become something greater. And when we finally return to face them, be better than they were. Be merciful. Show them that their cruelty did not make us cruel. His successor, a young admiral named Zara Okonkwo, David's daughter, promised to honor his wishes. The years passed. The decades passed. Deep in the Shroud, hidden from the galaxy that had rejected them, humanity continued to grow. They built space stations the size of moons. They constructed fleets of ships that could tear holes in reality itself. They wrapped a star in a shell of metal and crystal, creating a power source that dwarfed anything the Concord had ever built. They became something new, something powerful, something that the galaxy had never seen before. And through it all, they remembered. They remembered Earth, the home they had been forced to leave. They remembered the faces of the aliens who had condemned them. They remembered the fear in those alien eyes, the certainty that humanity would die in the darkness. They had not died. They had been reborn, and soon, very soon, it would be time for the galaxy to meet the new humanity. They were not sure whether to be afraid or amazed, perhaps both. For 100 years, the galaxy heard nothing from the Shroud. The galactic concord continued as it always had. Trade ships moved between star systems. Diplomatic meetings were held in great halls. Wars were prevented through careful negotiation. The great machine of civilization turned slowly, steadily, safely. Sometimes, an old Concord officer would look toward the edge of the galaxy and wonder what had happened to the humans. But such thoughts were rare. Humanity had been forgotten. They were a minor note in history books, a cautionary tale about the dangers of uncontrolled growth. Children learned about them in school the same way they learned about extinct animals. Interesting, but not important. High Consul Tyraxus had retired long ago. He spent his final years writing his memoirs, a long book about his role in saving the galaxy from the human threat. He died peacefully, celebrated as a hero. Statues were built in his honor. His name was spoken with respect. No one noticed when the first ships disappeared. It started along the border of the Shroud, in the empty space that separated the Concord from the quarantine zone. A trading vessel vanished, then another, then a small patrol fleet. Each time, there was no distress signal, no wreckage, no sign of what had happened. The ships were simply gone. The Concord sent investigators. They found nothing. The disappearances were blamed on spatial anomalies, on pirate attacks, on equipment failures. The real explanation never occurred to anyone. Why would it? Humanity was dead. Everyone knew that. But on the distant edges of Concord space, people began to whisper. Colonists on frontier worlds reported strange lights in the sky. Scouts saw vessels that appeared and vanished before they could be identified. A scientist on a research station detected energy readings that matched no known technology. These reports were ignored. The Concord had ruled the galaxy for 300,000 years. They had faced countless threats and survived them all. A few unexplained sightings meant nothing. Then came the signals. A Seraphine scientist named Luminol 7 was studying the cosmic background radiation when she noticed something odd. Hidden within the static of the universe was a pattern. Not a natural pattern, an artificial one. Someone was transmitting information, using frequencies so sophisticated that they had been mistaken for natural phenomena. Luminol 7 spent 3 years decoding the signals. What she found made her light flicker with fear. The transmissions were not communications. They were data streams. Vast rivers of information flowing between points scattered across the entire galaxy. And the source of these transmissions, when she finally traced them, was the Shroud. The humans were not dead. They had not been dead for a very long time, and they had been watching. Luminol 7 brought her findings to the Concord Council. The new High Consul, a Kron elder named Vethmorn, listened in silence. When she finished, he closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "How long?" he asked. "At least 50 years, Luminol 7 replied. "Possibly longer. The transmissions are everywhere. They have observation posts throughout Concord space. They know everything about us. Our military strength, our political divisions, our weaknesses." The council erupted in chaos. Some demanded immediate military action. Others insisted that this must be a mistake. The humans could not have survived, could not have built a surveillance network that spanned the galaxy. It was impossible. Vethmorn silenced them with a raised hand. He was old, older than most species could imagine. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had watched the Concord deal with threats that had seemed unstoppable, and he knew, with a cold certainty that settled in his ancient bones, that they had made a terrible mistake. "Activate the Watcher Arrays," he commanded. The Watcher Arrays were ancient technology, built long before the current Concord existed. They were powerful sensors capable of piercing any interference, seeing across any distance. They had not been used in 10,000 years. It took a week to bring them online. When they finally focused on the Shroud, the entire council watched in horrified silence. Where there should have been debris and death, there were fleets. Not hundreds of ships, not thousands, millions, ships of designs that Concord databases could not identify. arranged in perfect formation around structures that made planets look small, and at the center of it all, something impossible. A Dyson sphere. A complete shell surrounding a star, capturing all of its energy. Such structures existed in theory, but no species had ever built one. The engineering challenges were too great, the resources too vast. The humans had done it. They had wrapped a star in metal and crystal, and that star burned with colors that did not exist in nature. They have surpassed us, Elder Cronvith whispered. He was the oldest being in the chamber, one of the last survivors of the age before the conquered. He had seen many things in his long life. He had never seen anything like this. We sent them to die, and they became gods. The council sat in stunned silence. Everything they had believed was wrong. The humans had not spent a century dying. They had spent it building, growing, preparing, and now they had power that made the Concord look like children playing with toys. What do we do? Someone asked. Before anyone could answer, a new signal arrived. It came through every communication channel simultaneously, cutting through all encryption, all security, all barriers. A simple message, delivered in a calm human voice. The human species requests an audience with the Galactic Council. We wish to discuss terms. The message repeated once, then stopped. Silence fell over the chamber. Veth Morn looked at the holographic display showing the human fleet. Millions of ships. Technologies beyond understanding. A species that had been sentenced to death and had instead become the most powerful force in the galaxy. He thought about his predecessors, the leaders who had condemned humanity. They had acted out of fear, convinced that humans were dangerous. They had been right, but they had also been foolish. They had taken a threat and made it 100 times worse. We will meet with them, Vethmorn said finally. We have no choice. They will destroy us. Someone protested. They will take revenge for what we did. Vethmorn shook his head slowly. Perhaps, or perhaps they have become something more than we imagined, something better than we deserve. He paused, his ancient eyes heavy with regret. We will find out soon enough. The message went out to the human fleet. The Concord would meet. They would listen. They would face whatever judgment humanity had prepared. In the darkness of the shroud, aboard a ship that could tear apart worlds, a woman named Director Amara Okonkwo received the response. She was the great-great-granddaughter of David Okonkwo, the engineer who had first opened the rift gates. She had been born in the shroud, raised among the stars, trained to lead her people through whatever came next. She read the message and smiled. It was time. After a century of preparation, humanity was ready to face the galaxy again. She wondered if the galaxy was ready for them. The meeting place was an ancient station in the emptiness between stars. It was older than the Concord itself, built by a species that had vanished so long ago that even their name had been forgotten. It was neutral ground, as neutral as anything could be when one side had the power to destroy the other completely. The Concord sent everything they had. 3,000 warships from a dozen different species surrounded the station. Their weapons were charged, their shields at maximum. They knew it would not be enough, but they had to try. Pride demanded it. Humanity sent one ship. It was small, elegant, almost humble. It slipped out of a tier in reality and drifted toward the station without any apparent weapons, without any apparent shields. The Concord commanders watched it approach and felt a cold fear settle in their hearts. A species that sent one ship against 3,000 was either stupid or supremely confident. Humanity was not stupid. Director Amara Okonkwo walked into the meeting chamber alone. She was tall, with bronze skin and dark eyes that held a century of patience. Her body was subtly different from the humans the Concord remembered, stronger, more efficient, the product of generations of evolution in the harshest environment in the galaxy. The council representative sat behind a long table. High Consul Veth Morn was at the center, his ancient Kron face unreadable. Around him sat delegates from 100 different species, the most powerful leaders in the Concord. They had ruled the galaxy for 300,000 years. They had never felt so small. Amara stopped in the center of the chamber and looked at them. She did not bow. She did not show any sign of submission. Why would she? They all knew who held the power here. Thank you for agreeing to meet, she said. Her voice was calm, pleasant, almost friendly. I know this must be difficult for you. Vethmorn leaned forward. We have questions. I'm sure you do. Amara smiled. Let me save time by answering the obvious ones. Yes, we survived. Yes, we are stronger than you imagined. Yes, we have been watching you for decades. And no, we are not here for revenge. A murmur passed through the chamber. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. They had expected anger. They had expected threats. This calm confidence was somehow worse. Why not? Vethmorn asked. We sentenced your species to death. By all rights, you should hate us. Amara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. We did hate you, for a long time, in the early years, when our people were dying by the millions, when children were born into radiation storms and poisoned air. We hated you with every breath we took. We dreamed of returning with fire and fury. We planned your destruction in detail. She paused, letting her words sink in. But hate is exhausting. It consumes everything it touches, and somewhere along the way, we realized that we had a choice. We could become monsters, just like you feared, or we could become something better, something you never imagined possible. She raised her hand, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed the human domain. The shroud transformed into a paradise of technology and life, the dimensional gates opening to infinite new worlds, the Dyson sphere burning with impossible light. This is what we built while you forgot about us. Cities that float between dimensions, ships that can travel to the edge of existence, knowledge that would take your scientists 1,000,000 years to understand. We have become more than human, more than anything the galaxy has ever seen. The display shifted to show the human fleet. Millions of ships, each one capable of destroying planets. Weapons that could tear holes in reality. Power that made the Concord look like insects. We could take everything, Amara said. We could repay your cruelty with extinction. Many of our people wanted exactly that. There were debates that lasted for years. Some argued that you would never change, that leaving you alive would only lead to future conflict. She lowered her hand, and the display vanished. But we decided to be better than that. Better than you were. Better than our own anger. High Consul Vethmorn stared at her. He had lived for thousands of years. He had seen countless species rise and fall. He had never seen anything like this woman. This representative of a people who had every right to destroy him and were choosing not to. What do you want? He asked. Amara reached into her robe and produced a data crystal. She placed it on the table between them. We want partnership. Real partnership. Not the kind where you make all the rules and punish anyone who disagrees. We want the Concord to change. No more quarantine zones. No more secret interventions to keep species from growing too powerful. No more decisions made out of fear. She pushed the crystal toward Vethmorn. In exchange, we will share everything. Our technology, our knowledge, the doors we have opened to new dimensions. We will help the galaxy grow, evolve, reach potentials that you never imagined. Not because we have to, but because it is right. A Vethkai delegate slammed his fist on the table. You expect us to simply accept human leadership? To bow to the species we exiled? Amara turned to face him. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes made him shrink back in his seat. You exiled us because you were afraid we would dominate the galaxy. Now we have the power to do exactly that, and we are offering cooperation instead. If that is not proof that we have changed, nothing will be. She turned back to Vethmorn. You have 1 year to decide. During that time, our ships will remain in the shroud. We will not attack. We will not threaten. We will wait. But after 1 year, we will begin opening dimensional gates throughout the galaxy. Species that wish to grow will be welcome to join us. Species that wish to remain as they are will be left behind. She began walking toward the exit. We are not asking for permission, she said over her shoulder. We are offering an opportunity. The galaxy can grow with us, or it can watch us leave it behind. The choice is yours. She stopped at the door and turned one last time. One more thing. You may think that you can use this year to build weapons, form alliances, prepare for war. You can try. But I want you to understand something clearly. Outside the station, space rippled. The Concord commanders watched in horror as the human fleet emerged from nothing. Not the single ship they had seen. All of them, millions of vessels surrounding the Concord armada like wolves surrounding sheep. They appeared without warning, without any sign that they were coming. They could have attacked at any moment. They could have destroyed everything. Instead, they simply waited, watching, After exactly 10 seconds, they vanished. Space was empty again, as if they had never been there. Amara smiled at the stunned delegates. "We have been watching you for a century. We know everything. Your secrets, your weaknesses, your hidden weapons. There is nothing you can build in 1 year that will change the balance of power. Accept this truth, and make your decision wisely." She left without another word. Her ship departed, slipping back through a rift that closed behind it. The council sat in silence for a very long time. Finally, Vethmorn picked up the data crystal and held it to the light. "We created this," he said quietly. "We took a young species and tried to destroy them. Instead, we forged them into something beyond our understanding." He set the crystal down with a soft click. "Perhaps it is time we learned from our mistakes." The debates would continue for months. But in that moment, watching the space where millions of ships had appeared and vanished like ghosts, most of the delegates already knew how the vote would go. The galaxy was about to change forever. The vote was held on the anniversary of the exile. 312 species chose to accept humanity's offer. 87 chose to resist. The war, if it could be called that, lasted 11 days. Human fleets appeared without warning above the worlds of the resistors. Their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They did not burn or destroy. They simply separated mind from matter, sending entire crews into a deep sleep while leaving their ships perfectly intact. The Veth-Kai Grand Fleet, pride of the oldest warrior culture in the Concord, fell in 6 hours. Not a single ship was destroyed. Not a single crew member died. They simply woke up 3 days later to find human ambassadors waiting beside their beds, offering the same deal they had been offered before. One by one, the resistance crumbled. Some surrendered after seeing what happened to the Veth-Kai. Others fought until their last ship was put to sleep. A few species fled to the edges of known space, hoping to hide. None of them were pursued. Humanity let them go. "They will come back," Admiral Zara Okonkwo said at the final War Council. She was old now, over 120 years, but her mind was still sharp. She had led the human fleet through the entire campaign without losing a single soul on either side. "When they see what we are building, they will want to be part of it." She was right. Within a decade, every species that had fled had returned. The galaxy that humanity offered was too amazing to refuse. The Galactic Concord was dissolved. In its place rose the Commonwealth of Sentient Species. It was led by a council that included representatives from every member race, but everyone knew where the real power lay. Humanity had earned their place at the head of the table, not through conquest, but through wisdom. The changes began immediately. The dimensional gates opened throughout the galaxy, doorways to resources and worlds beyond imagination. Species that had stagnated for thousands of years suddenly had room to grow. Technologies that had been hoarded by the elite were shared freely. Knowledge flowed like water, lifting every civilization it touched. The Seraphine used human genetic tools to evolve into beings of pure thought. The Krone, who had believed they had learned everything there was to learn, discovered entire fields of science they had never imagined. Young species that the old Concord would have suppressed were encouraged to reach their potential. Not everyone welcomed the changes. Some elder races retreated into isolation, unable to accept guidance from a species they had once condemned. They built walls around their worlds and refused all contact. Humanity respected their choice. The gates remained open whenever they changed their minds. Others embraced change too eagerly. Within generations, some species had modified themselves so completely that they were unrecognizable. They became something new, something that had never existed before. They explored dimensions that even humans had not touched, pushing the boundaries of existence itself. And humanity continued to evolve. The Shroud-born generations had been different from their ancestors, but their children were different still. Longer lives, faster minds, bodies that could survive in environments that would kill their grandparents in seconds. Some humans chose to remain in physical form. Others uploaded their consciousness into vast computer networks that spanned dimensions. Still others merged with alien species, creating hybrid forms that combined the best of multiple evolutionary paths. Director Amara Okonkwo watched it all unfold. The technologies that had extended human lifespans now kept her alive far beyond any natural limit. She had seen the exile, the struggle, the victory, and the transformation. She had guided her species through its darkest hours and its brightest triumphs. On the 200th anniversary of the exile, now called Emergence Day, she gave her final address. The event was broadcast across 100,000 worlds, through dimensional gates, to colonies and places that the old Concord had never known existed. She stood on the steps of the Commonwealth Assembly, a building that had been constructed on the site of the old Concord Council Chamber. The same place where humanity had been sentenced to death now served as the seat of a government that spanned galaxies. 200 years ago, she began, her voice carried by technology that turned sound into light and light into thought. We were cast out. The galaxy looked at us and saw something dangerous. They saw our hunger, our curiosity, our refusal to accept limits. They decided that we were a threat, and they tried to destroy us. She paused, looking up at the stars. So many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities. They were right about one thing. We are dangerous. We refuse to stay still. We refuse to stop growing. We see walls and we tear them down. We see impossible challenges and we find ways to overcome them. That is who we are. That is what makes us human. Her gaze dropped back to the assembly of beings before her. Humans and aliens standing together. Species that had once been enemies now united in common purpose. But they were wrong about something too. They believed that our strength would make us cruel. They believed that power would corrupt us, that we would become the monsters they feared. They did not understand that the same drive that pushes us to grow also pushes us to help others grow. The same hunger that made us reach for the stars makes us want to lift others up beside us. She smiled, and the galaxy watched. We could have taken everything. We could have repaid cruelty with cruelty, fear with fear. Instead, we chose to build something greater, not an empire ruled by force, but a commonwealth united by possibility, not a galaxy frozen in place, but a universe constantly becoming something more. She raised her hand toward the sky, toward the dimensional gates that shimmered at the edge of the system, doorways to infinity. This is our legacy, not conquest, not revenge, growth, transformation, the endless pursuit of what we might become. We offer this gift to every species that will take it, not because we have to, but because it is right. Because helping others reach their potential is the highest purpose any being can serve. She lowered her hand and looked directly into the recording devices, speaking now not just to those present but to all the beings who would watch this moment in the years to come. They thought exile was a death sentence. They were wrong. It was a crucible, and we emerged from it stronger than they could have imagined. They thought the shroud would break us. Instead, it made us into something new, something better, something worthy of leading the galaxy into whatever comes next. Her voice softened, but somehow became more powerful. And now, the galaxy is ours. Not because we took it, not because we demanded it, but because we earned it. Through suffering and struggle and sacrifice, through choices that could have led to darkness but instead led to light, through the simple, stubborn refusal to become the monsters they expected us to be. She turned and looked at the building behind her, at the symbol of everything humanity had built. Remember this, all of you. Remember that fear creates the very things it seeks to prevent. Remember that power is not the same as wisdom. Remember that the greatest victory is not destroying your enemies but transforming them into friends. She faced the crowd one last time. They banished us to the edge of oblivion. They expected us to fall. We did not fall. We rose, and now the galaxy is ours. Not through conquest, but through the choice to be better than those who tried to destroy us. She smiled once more, the smile of someone who had seen hell and heaven and everything in between. The stars are calling. Let us answer them together. The crowd erupted in cheers that echoed across dimensions. Humans and aliens celebrated together, united in a future that had once seemed impossible. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, in the shroud that had once been a prison and was now a monument to human resilience, the old exile gates still stood. They were monuments now, preserved as reminders of what fear could do and what determination could overcome. On each gate, a simple inscription had been carved in every known language. They sent us here to die. We chose to live. We chose to grow. We chose to become something greater. Let this be a lesson for all who come after. No prison can hold a species that refuses to be imprisoned. No darkness can defeat those who carry their own light. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, not because they had taken it, but because they had earned it. And this was only the beginning.